Hey everybody, welcome to İsrailPod. I'm your host Fatih Şemsettin Işık, and I have my Jerusalem-based partner with me, Mustafa Fatih Yavuz. Welcome Fatih, how are things in Jerusalem?
Well, the things in Jerusalem is always, nowadays, is about Corona. And of course, we are in quarantine right now. And we're hoping that there won't be any more quarantine, but we have a guest right now. Maybe he will explain us whether should we expect any other quarantine time or not. Sir, welcome to our program. We have Mr. Abou Shahadeh from Balad Party.
Good evening, Fatih and Fatih. How are you?
It's really a pleasure to have you in our program, Mr. Abou Shahadeh. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
And I should start the questions. Everybody is wondering about what happened in last week, the collapse of the joint list. Let me ask actually this question first. Why did the joint Arab list collapse despite having such a great achievement in the last elections? Is there any strategy to compensate this collapse in the upcoming elections? What do you want to say about this?
Well, I think, Fatih, maybe we should little bit give some context for the discussion, and then we can get more into the details and what happened exactly in the joint list and all the other questions that you have. We should remind the audience, because what's happening in Israel is quite weird, it's quite strange. This is the fourth elections in less than 2 years. Okay, Israel is running into the fourth elections in less than 2 years, which means that we have very serious problem in the political stability in the state of Israel. The main reason for this is that, contrary to what everybody thinks, Israeli institutions that try to defend a little bit, at least, techniques of democracy are quite weak. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, the corrupted Israeli prime minister, is able to run the whole Israeli state according to his criminal files and his interest. There is no serious reason or no serious logic why should we find ourselves in the fourth elections in less than 2 years. In the Israeli political arena, there is really no serious political discussion. There's a kind of consensus between all the Israeli parties regarding all the important issues from their own point of view. So there is no serious political discussion or economical discussion or social discussion between the political parties. The only issue here is that Benjamin Netanyahu is strong enough to run the whole state with all its institutions according to his own interests. Now, part of the political parties here are the Arab-Palestinian political parties inside the state of Israel. Unfortunately, part of the people don't know. There's nearly 20% of the populations who are part of the Palestinian people. We are the indigenous people, where the state of Israel were built on the ruins of our state and of our people. Now, we are nearly 20% of the population, 1.7 million people. We have a lot of different political parties and different political movements. Part of them belong to the Islamic movements. Part of them are national movements. Part of it is from the Communist Party. We have different political trends, different political views. My party, Balad Party, the National Democratic Party, we worked for a long time in order to build what you are asking about, which is the joint list. After a long struggle for a long time, we were able to bring together the biggest four parties inside the political arena in our minority. The Communist Party, the Balad Party, part of the Islamic movement, not all of it, and another party which is called Al-Qa'ima Al-Arabiyya Lit-Taghyir. These four political parties made historical achievement, very big thing, in the last election. This was the first time that the Arab-Palestinian minority were able to bring 15 seats out of 120 inside the Israeli Knesset. And now, unfortunately, we are not continuing this achievement. Logically, we should have been starting this elections with 15 seats and trying to think about the 16th and the 17th. Unfortunately, because of very serious and deep political discussion between the the different political parties and the one which is representing the Islamic movement, we were not able to keep on with the joint list. And this political discussion, I can explain now along the interview. I talked too much you were too kind, not interrupting. So sorry, please, you can continue your questions and then I can come back to you.
Sir, I'm representing more journalistic side of this conversation right now. According to reports, these 4 parties came together in the house of Mohammed Baraka, the head of High Follow-Up Committee for Arab Citizens of Israel. According to reports, these 3 parties, Hadash, Tal, and Balad, were there, but at the end of the meeting, Mr. Mansour's UAL party left the meeting without the conclusion. This is the report saying. So what happened there, really? So what was the main rift between you guys and also Mr. Mansour's party?
Well, the serious discussion is the political one, as I said, which the 3 components of the joint list, my party, Balad party, and the 2 other, we see Netanyahu as the problem. We see Netanyahu as the biggest challenge from our point of view, and we see him as someone that we cannot work with, and we see him as someone who is responsible on the occupation of our people, someone who is responsible on Judaizing Jerusalem, someone who is responsible on keeping Gaza under siege, someone who is responsible on making the racist nation-state law against us, which discriminates against the Arab-Palestinian minority inside Israel. We see him as a very dangerous political figure. While Mansour Abbas is, at the beginning, he totally was talking like us, and we believe that we are having the same political agenda. And in the last few months, we were surprised to hear from him something which is totally different. Now he is seeing Netanyahu as part of the solution, not part of the problem. So this is the main issue here. There's a lots of different things that now we are talking about and discussing inside the institutions of our parties. I think that what Mansour Abbas is trying to do, the leader of the Islamic movement, is something quite dangerous for us and for our people, for the people that we are representing. Because what he is claiming now is our historical struggle and our historical experience in the struggle for justice, peace, and equality is not something attainable. It's not something that we can continue struggling for. And Israel is a very powerful state, and we should take what they are ready to give us. This way of thinking is something quite dangerous. Because for this, first of all, you don't need a political party. The Islamic movement, if you are ready to take anything they want to give you, there is no reason for your existence, to be honest. If you are not struggling for justice and equality, and you are ready to do all the compromises, so there is really no serious need for your existence. They will give you whatever they like, and that's it. What we are trying to do, first of all, the way we read different agendas of the Israeli Zionist parties, we see that there's a consensus against us. There's a consensus against our people. And we are fighting this consensus. We believe that the raison d'etat of all these parties is that we are struggling against the Zionist movement and the Zionist project in our homeland. This is why we exist. This is why. And the Arab-Palestinian minority, we are suffering from all kinds of racism and discrimination that you can think of. In anything that you check inside the Israeli state, when you are comparing between the Palestinian minority and the Jewish majority in Israel, you see discrimination and racism in everything that you check. For example, Fatih, you are living in Jerusalem. No one needs to tell you anything. Just by riding your car from the Arab areas to the Jewish areas, you can see discrimination and racism in all fields of life, in education, in the infrastructure, in the cultural events, everything. Same in all things that you check anywhere. Anyone coming from Turkey, for example, as a tourist to Israel, just by riding his car without any tour guide, without anything, just by riding his car from one place to the other, he will see the discrimination and racism that we are suffering in all fields of life. What we are trying to do as political parties, we are fighting against this racism. We are fighting against this discrimination. And we are trying to achieve equality for our people. Now, without struggle, we don't think that we can do it. All other similar projects, like the Zionist colonial project in Palestine, people, in order to take their rights, needed to go and lead a serious struggle against this settler colonial project. Otherwise, it cannot work, sir. Never happened in history. If we are learning from the historical experience. It never happened that the colonizer wakes up one morning, comes to the colonized and tells them, oh guys, sorry, I have been destroying your lives for decades. Now I want to give you rights. This never happened. In order to take your rights, you should struggle.
Maybe I should ask, I have still like some journalistic instincts to ask this question. So I saw a recent report in Jerusalem Post that the party you're leading now, Balad, might prefer to run the elections separating its ways from the joint list. Like, will you still go ahead with the joint list? Like, what do you want to say about this claim?
Strategically, sir, we want to keep the joint list. We think that the joint list is a strategic goal, and this is how we deal with it. So we are going to do our best to keep the joint list. If Mansour Abbas and part of the Islamic movement are not accepting our political agenda, or they have different way to work with or think about it, it is their right. We cannot hold them forcefully into the joint list. I think they have chosen a different way. I think the three other components of the joint list are going to continue their way together. I'm seeing the Islamic it's important also to say to the Turkish audience that the Islamic movement inside Israel, inside the Palestinian minority, was divided into two big movements. One under the leadership of Sheikh Ra'id Salah. This part does not agree to go for the elections inside the Israeli Knesset. They are against voting for the Israeli Knesset. And there is the one which is under the leadership of Mansour Abbas now, which wants to vote for the Knesset, and now they are changing their political agenda into a new program that really nobody is knowing exactly where are they leading to. We are seeing their way as something dangerous for the Arab Palestinian minority, but it's their right. They can do their efforts, they can do whatever they like.
Sir, I have a question. Of course, you know that Benjamin Netanyahu now is courting Arab votes. He was in Nazareth before, and he was in Al-Fahim. Yeah, that was so interesting to me, because I know that in the last free election, it was Benjamin Netanyahu saying that Arab votes won't count. He wasn't caring about Arab votes, and even saying that I think it was in 2015 election, he was saying that Arabs voting in droves, and he was calling his voters to come and vote for him. So it's so interesting to see, because it's so unlikely. Do you think that Arabs will vote for Benjamin Netanyahu? Palestinians living in Israel will vote for Benjamin Netanyahu? Because last week we talked with one of the Israeli experts, Arik Rutlisky from Tel Aviv University, and he told us that it is likely that this time Benjamin Netanyahu can take 2 or 3 seats from Palestinian sector of Israel. Do you think that Arabs will vote for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Okay, Fatih. Now you are recording me. You can check it after the elections. There is no chance that Benjamin Netanyahu will take 3 seats from an Arab Palestinian voters from within Israel. We know Benjamin Netanyahu. Our audience knows who is Benjamin Netanyahu. They know that he is a racist man. We have very hard experience under his leadership. People are quite politically aware and quite socially aware. They know all the incitements and all the racist speeches that Netanyahu were giving against us and against the Palestinian people in general and against the Palestinian minority, the citizens of Israel. And I think the more he is going to work inside Arab Palestinian society, the less votes he is going to get, because this will make the people more angry, because what he is trying to do gives the people very hard feelings that the man is not just racist, he also thinks that we are stupid, that Benjamin Netanyahu is not racist and responsible on all the things that we are suffering from, but he also believes that we are stupid enough also to vote for the prime minister who is destroying our houses, who is putting our people under occupation, who is putting Gaza under siege, who is trying to Jewedize Jerusalem and Masjid al-Aqsa. The Palestinian minority are suffering from all kinds of discrimination and racism. And then he also comes to ask for our votes. I don't think that, historically, by the way, there were a few thousand that were voting for the Likud party. I think he is going to get this few thousands. I'm sure it's going to be less than 1 seat, surely not 3 seats. surely. It's also important that the people should know, because Israel is something quite different than most of the states that they know about. The state of Israel was built in a very racist way, which puts something like there is 90% of the population inside the state of Israel are living Arabs alone and Jews alone. There are only, big cities which are 100% Jewish, and there are big cities which are 100% Arab. The basic process of immigration to the cities that they are seeing now in Istanbul or in Ankara or in any other Turkish city, in Israel it doesn't happen, or it happens according to race. Same with the political parties. Nearly all the political parties don't have Arab representatives, and those who do have Arab representatives have one or two Arab names that does not have any social, economical, or political background, and they don't have audience. The politics in Israel is also run according to the racist way that the state was built on from the beginning. So it's weird that you have a prime minister who is so strong like Benjamin Netanyahu, but on the same time, he can't have one seat out of the 120 from 20% of the population, because people knows him. People knows Netanyahu, they know his history, they know his incitement, they know his racist policies, and they were suffering from all this for a long time.
So I have a quick question regarding Benjamin Netanyahu and his right-wing opponents right now, Gideon Sa'ar. So you have a bad experience, so to say, regarding recommending Benny Gantz, and I think it turned out very worse. I don't think that this time, this is how I interpret the situation from journalistic side. I don't think that joint list this time will recommend somebody. But is there a chance that you will recommend Gideon Sa'ar just to topple Benjamin Netanyahu?
First of all, we in Balad never wanted to recommend on any Zionist to be a prime minister, because from the beginning, we saw the struggle between us and the Zionist movement in general, and it is not something that we had personal with Benjamin Netanyahu or any other Zionist leader. And we tried to prevent all the other components of the joint list from recommending on anyone. It came up clear from the experience that the way the Balad party was reading the Israeli political map was much closer to reality and to the truth than all the others. And after the very bad experience that they had with Benny Gantz, I hope that we will not have to deal with this question on whom to recommend upon to be the prime minister, because we see all of them, in a negative way, so we cannot recommend on anyone. Now, regarding Gideon Sa'ar, the current elections in Israel is a kind of primaries inside the Likud party. Who is Gideon Sa'ar? Gideon Sa'ar is number 2 in Netanyahu's party. This is the same. Moreover, Sa'ar is considered to be more extreme than Netanyahu in a lot of his political agenda. So there is no chance that we are going to recommend any of them. And I think that the recommendation should be thought about again. And I think we should be clear with our audience to say that the recommendation was a mistake. We should be straightforward with our audience, and we should tell them that it was a mistake. The Balad party knew it from the beginning, and seems to be that our reading of the political map in Israel was much closer to the truth.
As you know, there's a change now in the White House, and Biden administration, before he came to White House, he was emphasizing that he will be favoring the two-state solution. So what are your expectations as the member of Knesset from the joint list and the leader of the Balad party? Do you think he will create a change? What are your expectations from the Biden administration?
First of all, any American administration, whether Democratic or Republican, were all the time in favor of the state of Israel. And they say that strategically, they are more for the state of Israel, and they deal with Israel as their historical important ally. They deal with the rest of the Arab world in a very racist way. Now, there is no doubt that changing Trump's administration was something very positive and very important for all the Palestinian people. The foreign policies of Trump's administration was much different than what we knew historically from all the American other administrations. Trump dealt with Israel not as an American president who has different solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but he saw himself as part of the settlers of Israel. He thought like an Israeli settler. He planned like an Israeli settler. He believed in all the racist ideologies that these settler movements had. So changing his administration was something quite important and quite positive from the Palestinian point of view. And Biden has already started few other steps which are good and positive. But we, the Palestinians in Israel, I think that we are a little bit forgotten in this two-state solution issues, because when Biden is talking about the two-state solutions, he's talking about a Palestinian state, and he is continuing to talk about Israel as a Jewish state. Now, this is the main problem that we are suffering from. This is the main challenge that we are suffering. What we are saying as the indigenous community, as the people where the state of Israel were built on the ruins of my people and the ruins of my state. We are living now as a Palestinian minority inside the Israeli state. And we say something which is quite important. As long as Israel wants to see itself a Jewish state or the state of the Jewish people, it means that they are going to continue to discriminate against us. Such a state can never bring equality between all the citizens. We are not Jewish. 20%, the indigenous community, we are not Jewish. In our political agenda, we say that in any historical compromise, Israel should become a normal state. We call this political project the state of all its citizens. Now, in Israel, it sounds weird because it's a racist state. But what we are fighting for is a normal democracy. What we are trying to do, the change that we are trying to bring, is that we want to make Israel the state of all its citizens, a normal democracy, a state that can deal according to equality, justice, and peace for all the citizens, not just for the Jews, not just for the Arabs. The problem with the Biden administration is that they are far from this idea. And if you read the latest report, which was published by a very important Israeli NGO called B'Tselem, which describes Israel as an apartheid. Israel deals differently between the Jews and the non-Jews, including the Arab Palestinian citizens of the state. You see different policies, different laws, different system of laws that deals differently with the Arab population and the Jewish population. This apartheid should not be allowed to continue. So we are expecting from the Biden administration to rethink the way they are thinking about the meaning of the Jewish state and to see that we are victims of this racist entity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shahadeh. See you in the 5th election.
Inshallah. I hope it will be a little bit far. Thank you.
Okay, folks, that's it for this week. See you soon in the new episode of IsrailPod.